Welcome to Leaders and Learners. My name is Tanya McKenzie, and you can find me at the intersection of public relations and leadership. Join us as we talk to organizational leaders, elected officials, experts, authors, artists, and personalities, sharing their stories, talking about how they got to where they are and how they continue to learn and lead the way. So without further ado, let's get into it. To learn. Greetings, good people. Welcome to another edition of Leaders and Learners, where we know that the best leaders are lifetime learners. Oops, little technical glitch there. Well, we're back. Welcome to Leaders and Learners, where we all know that the best leaders are lifetime learners. And today we are going to let you learn a little bit about PR from the perspective of a pop culture phenomenon. Is it pop culture? Is it hip hop culture? California culture? I think this was a national phenomenon that has hit all of social media and obviously California. We have a lineup of amazing public relations professionals here to share with you how all of this impacts what you watch, what you listen to, and kind of how you move through your day on a regular basis. We have some amazing leaders in the public relations space. We got my girl Tiff, we got Brian, we have Daniel, and we have Tony here to get into the concert that took place during Juneteenth. But we all know that this didn't just start on Juneteenth. So before we get started on that, I'm going to let each one of them know, let you know where they are, just to let you know that it wasn't just a local phenomenon, and what kind of PR they practice. Because no matter what genre we specialize in, public relations is an art and a science. In order to be able to get our target audiences or our talent's target audience to tune in, there's certain things that you might not recognize that happens behind the scenes. So, Tiff, go ahead and get us started. Let us know where you are and what kind of PR you practice.
First of all, thank you so much for having me, Tanya. I love these conversations. I am based in New York. My name is Tiffany Knighten. I am the founder and CEO of Brand Curators. I have a background in corporate communications and entertainment publicity. These days, I'm doing PR for creatorpreneurs, founders, and influencers. Although I'm based in New York, I'm based in Brooklyn. I am originally from Inglewood, California, and I'm home in South Bay area right now. So it's been a nice little homecoming these last couple of weeks, especially with Kendrick and everything that's been going on. So I'm happy to be a part of this conversation.
Thank you for being here, Tony.
Oh man, that's a hard to lead up to right there. But I won't say genre because I kind of do everything, whether it be sports, whether it be entertainment. I'm all over the place. I kind of like a one-stop shop. I kind of get involved in everything. Started my company in 2019, Rise and React Media. You can follow me at Rise with Tony, obviously right there. And listen, I'm a lover of hip hop, a lover of music. So seeing all this Drake and Kendrick Lamar beef at pop-up concerts and how it streams so much revenue for actually both of these guys is going to be pretty important to get into this perspective. So thanks again for joining and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Daniel.
Guess it would help if I unmute, like we didn't learn that during COVID. But good afternoon, everybody. My name is Daniel Smith. I am currently in Tampa, Florida, CEO of Awkward Media Group. Kind of the same, a one-stop shop, but primarily work with a lot of athletes and politicians and helping them get their stuff out to the right target audience, and then also starting to pick up some of the influencer market, helping them get to the different events and those types of things, because as we know, influence marketing is about to take over. So thanks for having me.
Oh, is it? We can definitely get into that. Brian?
Tanya, thanks so much for having me. So I am the founder of Flackable. Just celebrated my company's 10-year anniversary a couple months ago. My focus is public relations, but more specifically, credibility marketing. My whole concept and my approach to PR is that PR without a systems built in place to leverage it is just publicity. And I work with mostly financial services companies. Now, I certainly have crossover into sports and entertainment and some of the other avenues that have been discussed already. But wealth management has been my bread and butter. I do a lot of business in Southern California, so I'm excited for this particular chat. I know a thing or two about the magnitude of what we saw play out, on Prime, last week, and I'm excited to kind of bring a little bit of my take to that conversation.
Awesome to have you. So let's go ahead and get started on first topic, because everyone here seems to be very comfortable with influencers, one, and credibility and reputation. So start with the concert, okay? Let's start where everything has climaxed at this point. Were you surprised that the concert happened? Were you surprised that it happened on Juneteenth? And what was your thought, especially since we have a lot of people in here that are into sports media, seeing all of the athletes there? Let's go ahead and take a couple minutes, each of you, and give your initial thoughts on the concert, your surprise with that, and like the reputation and credibility that went along with the people that were there, that were invited. Tiff?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, the execution and the timing was beautiful. I think for me, a lot of the success of this was all about the timing and intention. When you think about, of course, Juneteenth and the pop out, being something that is uniting not only, hip hop fans and the culture, but it was definitely a showcase of LA unity. That's for certain. It was such a homecoming. Something about like, the build up to that and being able to then not only have this concert, but then to be able to invite local LA acts to be a part of it and open up the show. And it kind of comes back to, I'm sure we'll get into this more, but it kind of comes back to really utilizing the community to be your biggest advocates. So if you're being able to use that platform to not only put people on, but then also leverage such a huge moment, I mean, there's no doubt that this was magnificent just for that reason alone, on top of all of the great things that came after it. So I just want to start off with setting the stage with timing, intention, and how that kind of played a role into this.
In community, I love that part. Tony?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think one of the biggest things was, I mean, you heard everybody talk about credibility. I mean, how much more credible do you get than to have guys like Dr. Dre show up, right? I mean, you can't get any more credible than that. I mean, you talked about athletes, and that just shows how mainstream music is, right? Like I'm a Philly guy. You see in the background, I go back to AI, right? Allen Iverson was exactly the reason why the culture changed in the NBA. He brought hip hop into the NBA. That's why you have DJs now at halftime. You have live performances. I went to a Sixers game and watched BBD perform live. I mean, you would have never seen that. And I think that's why seeing all those athletes there is so symbolic. It just shows you, like Tiff said, I mean, it was set up perfectly. The stage was there. You led up to it, right? I mean, it was, oh my God, the social media beef obviously was intentional. It's set up right. And just with the social media, you talk about athletes, they're always on social media now. So everything just culminated in that one particular forum.
Okay, let me ask this question. There was a little beef in my own house where I made a statement. I said, listen, this has been very calculated. At least on Kendrick's part, I believe it was very calculated. I almost feel like, even though Drake dropped the line and said that I led you to these lies, I feel like by the end of the event, by the end of the concert, Kendrick actually led him into that trap with all of the intention of getting him to say the things that he said. If you listen to the ploy and how it was dragged out, I just feel like it was very intentional. So the argument was, and I actually have a post on Twitter where people were like, there's no PR in hip hop. There's no PR in hip hop beefs. And I was like, maybe that was before. Maybe that was the Tupac and Biggie era. Maybe that was the Ice Cube and No Vaseline era. But I highly I believe, and I stand by what I said, there is a level of PR in what took place. Why is that? We talk about timing. We talk about audience. We talk about the messaging. I cannot, and I'll fight with anybody at this point, especially the way that it ended. I'm standing by what I said. There is PR in hip hop. Let's argue.
Kendrick's a
Daniel?
Gemini. I just want to remind everybody, Kendrick Lamar is a Gemini. That man is moving with intention, okay? He very specifically, hey, we really lucked out as music fans, in my opinion, too, as Kendrick Lamar fans. Like we got so much new music out of him. We got so much content out of him. He really wanted to move with intention with this and make sure that it had this impact and that was leveraged.
There is PR in hip hop. Daniel, you want to argue? Do you want to argue with me? Do you want to argue?
I mean, I agree with you. There is PR in hip hop, but I mean, I think we have to look at it too from the way that he targeted the audience that he knew wanted to see this happen, and
Talk
then
about it.
the mystery that he allowed for it too. So nobody knew he was going to have other stars pop out and do it from that way. And then not to even call it a concert, he called it a pop out. So therefore, it's almost like this: hey, you better be there, or you're going to miss everything that's going to happen. Because at pop-out stores, when they launch and they feature everything, once that store leaves, sometimes they don't even have the same stuff anymore. So he kind of put it out there like, hey, this is going to be a once in a lifetime event. But we also missed the point of how he locked in Amazon. And Amazon streamed it, and the way the cameramen and those people helped that production just kind of excel and walk from there, Kendrick knew exactly what he was doing. So there was definitely PR in everything that he did.
Brian?
Yeah, so a few things. All right, audiences love rivalries. Rivalries make for great TV. It makes for great viewership. And sometimes, and you see this in a lot of fields, you see this in athletics, sometimes there are those wink-wink rivalries where the two have respect for each other, they're playing to the crowd, and it works. You've seen that. We've got Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, and you've seen it throughout sports. You see it in hip hop a lot. But sometimes there's only one person who's winking, and the other person is not on that level. They're serious. And I actually, I'm telling you, I'm going to disagree with you. I mean, I think this was a big miscalculation on Drake's fault. Drake thought he was winking and setting up a fun little back and forth, and Kendrick took it and took it to a different level. And if we're talking about a PR battle, Kendrick is clearly winning this battle. I think Drake's got a lot he needs to clean up for how he's been exposed over the past few months, and especially just the past couple of weeks.
I mean, the fact that this is even being nominated as a Grammy, I think, has that it may be potentially nominated as a Grammy. I know Drake is sitting at home just punching the air. I know he has to be at this moment because he has to listen to that song everywhere he goes. It's played on the radio. Kendrick did what needed to be done. And as you say, he's a Gemini, so he was very calculated in what he did. So
I'd also like to point out the fact that just everything that's come from this, of course, concert, merch, the music video, like just the lead up of it being very intentionally a rollout. And I want to also go back to, in public relations, the importance of listening to your audience and listening to the feedback, the data, and informing your next decision. And so there's a couple things leading up that, Kendrick, the calculated Gemini creative artist that he is, he listened and he put that into the next steps. For example, Drake really emphasizing that Kendrick's disconnected from the culture. He said, I'm going to show you. He said, I'll be right back. Let me put on something real quick to show you just how connected to the culture I am. And then secondly, I just think about how when, these tracks were coming out, people really like Drake being kind of like the pop artist rapper that he is. He makes bops, he makes hits, he makes bops. And people said that Kendrick had no replay value. And then when he dropped Not Like Us, making this absolute bop banger, something that has the most replay value, something that is very, West Coast vibes that can be played in the streets as an anthem. I mean, it was playing in New York and all different bars and clubs and playing in LA and all over. So I think that he really was kind of listening, getting that feedback and going back to the drawing board as he executed this, which goes back to just the intentionality of a PR campaign.
So here's my question. When you are trying to execute a successful and dynamic campaign, what should you be looking for from your audience to know what you plan to deliver is going to hit? How do you decide as a professional, and what do you think Kendrick's people were thinking, or what was Kendrick thinking as he was planning to execute this? Talk to the people.
I mean, I think he did. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I'll jump back in. So I had an opportunity to see Kendrick speak live back in 2017 at the Forbes 30 Under 30 Summit up in Boston. And his sit down, it was about a half-hour Q&A. Anybody listening, I recommend you all go back, find that YouTube video of Kendrick doing this one-on-one Q&A panel. It gives you a lot of insight into his business mind. And his business mind is very unique because you got the sense from that talk that he is a pure artist with a very smart business sense. So is he doing anything that's not calculated? Absolutely not. But he is staying grounded and true to who he is as an artist. And you're seeing that playing out, and that's why it works. And that's why, I mean, the not like us, message that he's putting out right now, it works and it cuts deep with Drake. It's
Part of this,
damaging to Drake.
Part of this, what I think I want the audience to understand is brand value, right? Your personal brand value, your business brand value. When you are consistent to it, it pays off over time. Even if in the immediate moment, it doesn't seem to be impactful. When you have a consistent brand, you have high brand value. So I don't think many people that have always looked to Kendrick's music as something that is culturally relevant ever doubted his ability to be able to do this. Like, I didn't hear a lot of, I don't know if he can come back from whatever Drake's little spit was, right? I think that Drake underestimated him and didn't really do his research. And I say that to say anyone out there that's planning on executing an event, planning on executing a campaign, you do have to do the research and you have to recognize patterns. You have to recognize the things that are consistent in a brand to be able to maximize on it. In this case, I think Drake underestimated him. He didn't really do the research. He didn't really research the fact that he didn't like him. Like, this was not a tit for tat. This was a mess with me again and watch what happens. And I also look at, okay, from a hip hop perspective and someone that just loves music, a lot of people that Drake has partnered with over the years, he's beefing with. And I was listening to some music with the kids the other day. I was like, he's beefing with Ross. He was on Ross' album. He's beefing with ASAP. He beefed. I saw him a long time ago when he was with Chris Brown. Let him open up for him long ago. And his concert was, Drake's part was horrible. But Chris still rode with him. But I'm like, then he beefed with him. Like, Chris put him on. Like, what are we doing? Why is it that this man is beefing with everybody and underestimating people that really have been consistent in their brands? Talk to me about that.
Well, Tanya, I mean, Kendrick was able to eat him up, because when you think about consistency and brand value, as you're speaking about now, you think about Drake has had all these eras and there has been a lot of inconsistency. Like, yes, he has been able to kind of remain, a top artist and consistently put out music and records. However, I thought it was so interesting when Meg Thee Stallion and Hiss just kind of alluded to, cosplay, fake accents. Like, you are kind of adopting other cultures, whereas Kendrick has been so 10 toes down in his community where he's from, representing. And so it was one of those things where it's almost like, kind of like a predator just waiting to catch his prey. He was waiting to eat him up because he has always been all about community culture, whereas Drake seems to be kind of flighty and trying things on for size in a way that does feel inauthentic to people. And it worked for a while, but I think after all these years, people have started to really catch on to the fact that it's not rooted in anything substantial, but more so what he's doing in the moment.
And we've talked about this a lot in our PR communities about brands being consistent, whether it was the large brands that decided to adopt the DEI efforts after George Floyd, and now you see those faltering by the wayside, right? Or just companies jumping in cultural events but then jumping back out when they're feeling the heat, like they're not consistent. They just jump in for trending rewards, but then when it gets tough, they duck and dodge. So what is your advice to brands, to celebrities, to anybody that's really trying to find, like they're doing double dutch and they can't seem to get in and be consistent, they keep getting tripped up? Daniel?
I mean, they gotta realize the marketing world is not a microwave. So you can't just throw it in something in there and think that it's just gonna hit automatically and it's gonna be something quick that you're gonna ride the wave off of. Because we even saw it with the Kendrick Lamar and Drake beef. Other artists tried to jump in that all of a sudden had beefs with Drake. None of their songs took off the way that Kendrick and was able to do and be able to do it from there, because he had a calculated plan on how he was going to do that. So you always got to make sure that trust your audience. You got to make sure that you give your audience what they're looking for, and also that you're culturally sound and connect with that audience, because that's what people are looking for now. If you don't connect with them, they're not trying to hear from you.
Tony?
It's all about engagement. I mean, it's all, and I want to take you back a little bit. Like Tony, you mentioned about how we've had beef back in the day, but never from a PR standpoint. I mean, look, go all the way back. I'm old school, right? Go all the way back to LL and Cannabis, right? So when they had that beef, when Cannabis came out with Second Round Knockout, one of the biggest beefs to LL was he was too mainstream, he was too pop, he couldn't take it back to the hood, right? And he comes back with that 4-3-2-1 verse that literally destroyed Cannabis, but nobody really talked about it back then because there was no PR behind it. It didn't really grow LL anymore because LL was already on top of his game, but it showed another side of him. But LL knew he had it. So like Daniel's saying, a lot of these guys came out with other beats, but it really didn't hit. LL, he knew it was going to hit. He knew he had it. So he was just hiding it in, and he just came out. And then he comes out with 14 shots to your dome, and then he comes out with a real hardcore album. Then he goes back and shows that he could do anything. So if he, there was no PR around that, so it wasn't really mainstream, but it almost seems like the same kind of situation now where Kendrick went back and did something they said he couldn't.
Brian?
Yeah, so you can't buy or manufacture authenticity. And I think that's why Drake is not coming out of this well, because Drake is Nickelodeon made. That is his roots and his path into where he is now. If I remember when I watched Nickelodeon as a kid, I watched The Adventures of Pete and Pete. All right, if Pete and Pete started a rock band, do you think the rock community would embrace them and respect them on the level that Drake's getting? Drake gets a lot of respect. And listen, I am not doubting his character and I am not doubting his talent. I'm just saying he took a way different path to get to where he is than a Kendrick Lamar and so many other talented artists have. So yeah, he did take a different path. And I think Kendrick is driving that point home consistently and effectively.
So I was watching this, listening to Not Like Us. I was driving home with my son, actually. And it's been entertaining to me to watch the younger generation really just hold on to this. The young kids and their groups and every nationality, every race, they are absolutely loving this. So from the standpoint of hip hop, what has this done? What has Kendrick Lamar done for the genre of hip hop or just American music at this point?
First of all, I mean, it's quotable as hell. There's so many, just great quotes there. Everything about, again, just coming back to the flow, coming back to how it has that West Coast feel. It's hilarious, Tanya, because there's like kids at bar mitzvahs, jumping in circles, singing Not Like Us. It's just something that has affected everybody and become almost like an anthem. And it kind of comes back to the pop out theme. It has been like very consistent throughout as an anthem, as a declaration, which is always something fun to catch on to. But I do want to say, in terms of hip hop, one thing that I've been loving getting is that it's kind of bringing back a real rollout. We don't get these
Mm.
really robust rollouts like we used to get. It makes me so sad. I think about Normani, for example, and like the fact that, you know, we've been waiting on this album, and we just want to see more with like how the album's being like, you know, leveraged, and more events, more community engagement, like all the things that Kendrick has done are almost like reminiscent of what we had in the past when it came to music. But now it's a blip. Everyone's, you know, you have everyone's attention for 2 seconds, an album comes out, and you kind of stop hearing about it after a couple of weeks, especially with like the news cycle, social media. So the fact that we were getting really intentional timing with how every record was coming out, especially, you know, after Meet the Grams kind of dropped immediately after, you know, Push Ups or Tailor Made Freestyle. So just going that back and forth made it fun, leading up to the surprise pop out. And then now, you know, filming the music video in Compton with the whole community and watching everybody get excited about that. There was a lot of press there, just interviewing different members of the community, different residents of Compton, asking how they felt to be a part of something like this. And it just feels nostalgic. It just feels like kind of, you know, music rollouts are back. We love it as music fans to kind of see it not just go away so quickly. So I think that that's something that, you know, hopefully can start a trend of bringing it back to what we originally used to do and love.
You know, I think companies thought they were saving so much money when they got rid of artist development. And I just feel like it's a loss because you lose the longevity. If you look at like an LL or even a Lil Kim, and they've come and gone, but they've been consistent. They've learned how to be artists. They've learned how to roll out. They've learned so many things about the business of their music, that they can come back in, and we can get on, you know, LL's new one at some point too in another taping. But he can still, after all these years, decide, I'm going to roll out some new music, and this is how you do it, and this is how you do it successfully. So I think the mentors of a Kendrick Lamar has allowed for him to be able to kind of do it old school style and bring it back in a way where everybody gets excited about it, and we celebrate the new music. It's the newness of it that really got us excited, and it just happened to be good and new. But I do want to ask this. There's going to need to be a level of reputation management here. A little crisis PR is going to have to take place for Drake, because if you start listening to old interviews of other artists, they've said it over and over. And you brought up Meg. There's other people that have said it. Drake has lacked roots. He has lacked consistency in finding a cause that actually resonates with his audience. I don't even know who his audience is. Even before this happened, I was like, okay, I can only do like 3 Drake songs a day. I got to tell my kids, like, that's enough. But I think part of artists having an audience that stays dedicated to them is knowing what they stand for. And many people have called him out for not having anything that he stands for. What do you, and I want to hear from each of you, feel like Drake's path is for his crisis reputation right now? Like, how does he manage this reputation that he seems to have gotten in the industry?
So I'll jump in. I think in for Drake's part, it's not a crisis for him unless he makes it a crisis. Okay, I mean, he does need to reflect on how things transpired. Clearly, he miscalculated. But he's also a very well-connected artist who has a lot of people who have his back, and that's where that credibility factor comes in. So I think Drake brushing this off, pivoting away from this because he's not going to win this battle, but pivoting it away, reconnecting with other artists who have always had his back, continuing to put out good music. He's hip hop. He's crossed over into pop. He's putting out pop music. You know, you've got a fan base. They're going to like it. Ride this out. Drake's going to be just fine.
See, I disagree.
Talk about it.
Because now we need to know who Drake is. And Drake needs to authentically present who he is. He tried to hide his son. He tried to hide so many different elements of him, as an artist. Now this has pointed out that we don't know who you are. And so Drake needs to find a way to reconnect with his fans, to find a way to bring back that authenticity to who he is, because he's tried to do so many different things to, keep his career elevated and moving forward. But now, who is Drake?
I agree. I completely agree, bro, with Daniel 100%, because I was just going to say, I'm going to be the old school guy here, but I'm going to say that Drake obviously needs to reinvent himself, because I look at him as being back in the days Noriega, right? So when Nori came out, Nori was always a collab guy, right? He was always on collaborations. Drake, if you think about it, most of his well-known stuff are with Weezy or with Rihanna, right? They're all, even Ja Rule back in the day with all his collaborations, right? So I think Drake needs to come out, like Daniel said, he needs to come out with who are you? This is my own album, my own pop-up, and show everybody actually who he is and not who everybody wants him to be.
I think it's a nice
Brian,
combination.
real quick, Brian, people are buying tickets to his concerts and singing Kendrick Lamar songs at his concert. So I don't know if he can just keep showing up. Tiff.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it needs to be kind of a nice balance. For example, when all this was happening, the first thing I was thinking is Drake needs to sit there and eat his food and let Kendrick cook for a minute. Especially because I remember it was like around Father's Day, and I noticed he had a little post where he kind of, stepped out, had a post with his son, looked like he, put on a fit, had a really calm kind of social presence for a little bit. I thought that was appropriate just while this is while this is all taking place. But I think then there needs to be kind of like, hopefully his team is kind of working in the background to then slowly kind of figure out how are we going to come back into this authenticity. I totally agree with Daniel. We need to figure out now who you are. And it needs to be addressed in some way. So I'm very eager to see how they do address that. But I do think that for the time being, just kind of laying low was great. I think that last diss track definitely sounded like he was a little wounded, definitely sounded a little defeated. You could hear it in his voice. You could hear him kind of being like, yeah, I don't know, kind of, oh man, all right, I throw in the towel. So that's definitely like a lay low period that is necessary.
And that's the thing.
But does he understand that? Because Kendrick spoke at the college graduation, and then Drake tried to troll him right after that. So I'm still, it's giving
I forgot
very
about that.
petty, giving very, I don't even know what to call it. It's like you got beat up, but then you want to keep coming back around, throwing rocks and hiding your hand. I don't understand that. So I'm struggling with understanding what his team is saying to him and what they are advising him to do, because if you turn around and look, there's still some very petty, menial things that he keeps doing that's saying, nah, I ain't going away, which is fine. But if you're not going to go away, then you got to come back with something stronger than a social media post about Compton College.
And when you're on the wrong side of a feud, when you're on the wrong side of a PR battle, sometimes the worst thing you can do is just keep putting things out there or trying to escalate, whether you're jumping in and apologizing. I am always very I'm always hesitant to recommend to clients to just automatically apologize when they're getting attacked. Sometimes an apology is the worst thing you can do. That just adds fuel to the fire of the people who already want to see you fail. So it does need to be calculated. So I do think taking a step back, breathing, and getting away from it a little bit, he doesn't need to keep fueling this thing. He's not helping anything by fueling it at this point. So he doesn't need to wave the white flag, but take a step back, breathe, get your head in a better space, and be a little strategic when you come back out.
So Mumu in the audience has said a few things that I want to address. So he said Kendrick cares about being a great hip hop artist, not just about making good songs. Very true. He's being very consistent about who he is. It's like actors that have decided, or black actors that have decided, no, I'm not going to keep taking the slave role. I need something more substantial. Absolutely. And he can continue to craft his career by deciding what he's going to participate in. And then we know who who Drake is. We just can't believe how terrible he actually is for the culture. Something you said really resonated with me. Let Drake be pop. He should not be validated by the culture because he's not of the culture, doesn't respect the culture, and doesn't care to educate himself about the culture. Here's the thing about this. One, he is still melanated. And there's a lot of people in our culture that struggle with their light melanation. Okay. There's a lot of people that struggle with where they fit in. The problem is when you try to be something that you're not. So I do think that he needs to take a step back and figure out who he is. That's the problem. He don't know who he is. So he can't tell us who he is. He has some internal struggles that he's dealing with. So before he can show who he is to us, he needs to figure out what his blackness is, what his father is, what his mother is, what his Canadian culture is to him. And then he can come back and let us know who he is through good music, not simply assimilating to what he thinks people want him to be, because that's exactly what we tell people not to do in PR. I'm not going to present a story of who you want people to believe you are instead of who you really are. I'm not going to lie about what your products do. I need you to go back and make sure your products do those things. And then we'll let the audience know, we'll let the community know, we'll let the public know who it is. So I want you, if you don't mind, to respond to these comments that Mumu has made, because I do feel like, and I've seen people throughout my career and throughout since I was young, that are light-skinned Black people struggling with their Blackness.
Yeah, well, I think what happened here is that Drake reminds me of the kids that grew up in the suburbs versus the kids who grew up in the hood. And it's like we were trying to get out the hood, and for some reason the suburban kids wanted to act like they were from the hood. That's kind of where I think Drake is battling that line at, because he's like, yeah, I'm this hard dude and doing this, but you didn't grow up like that. You know, mom and dad was there. You didn't have to worry about XYZ struggles. You were a childhood star and these types of things, where you got Kendrick who really got it out the mud. And so when you come at those type of people, you got to realize we don't come back and fight fair, because we know that we got to go off of this one chance, and you only get that one opportunity to make an impact. And so I think that's what, Kendrick did. He was innovative. He already had things ready. Like, I think Drake said, I fed you these lies, but an hour after you dropped your disc, Kendrick was ready to go back at you. So it wasn't that you led him on these lies. He was ready for you. He already knew what you were going to come back and say. So
Locked and loaded. Locked and loaded.
Understanding that culture, it's that fight or flight mentality. And I don't think Drake understood really what he was getting himself into.
Tiff, Tony?
Yeah, I think another thing about it is it's not that Drake was just kind of, existing in his own way and going about, the category that he's kind of created for himself. Again, he has been very well connected. He's been very successful. He has had, these top tracks. But I think somewhere along the way in his own identity crisis, he's kind of, made enemies and dragged people through the mud. And I think, like you said, people aren't just going to fight fair. So if you are kind of poking at the bear, and multiple people he was doing this with, I think that's when things started to really turn. So he wasn't just staying in his own lane and making his music and growing his brand. It kind of became like attacks on other artists. And I think it spiraled from that point. I mean, again, Meg kicked this off with his, so there was a lot that kind of went on with his, poking into Tory Lanez in that situation, being in women's business, which we don't need to do all that. So I think there was some reflecting that Drake needed to do with his character and himself that led to all of this.
One thing's for sure, right? If you're not authentic, you're going to be outed by any community, by any culture. And it reminds me kind of, when you think about it, I go back to like 8 Mile, to the beef at the end, right? Where Eminem says to the free world, like, his real name's Clarence. He went to a private school, but here you are trying to act like a gangster, right? So you have to, like, people respect you more. Who cares? If you went to a private school and your name was Clarence, screw it. Then your name's Clarence, you went to a private school. But if you keep trying to be somebody you're not, you're constantly going to get outed. You're going to continue to lose respect. And unfortunately, I'm not going to want to represent you, because then it brings my credibility down as a representative as well.
100%. Brian?
I agree with everything I just heard. I have nothing else to add.
He has a song called Own It, so you got to own it.
You got to own it. Here's my question. Here's my question for each of you. If you had one takeaway for each of your clients when studying this whole phenomenon that has taken place with Drake and Kendrick Lamar, what would you tell them? Daniel, start with you.
Ooh, I knew you was gonna come to me first, and I'm glad I was ready because I took some notes. I think the one thing I would tell them though is the authenticity is the key, and this is why it's key, because if you're authentic, people resonate with you and they're gonna support you. And I always tell people don't buy with their mind; they buy with their heart. And if you can connect to those heartstrings, you can almost sell them anything you want to, as long as they understand the story and they connect with it.
Very good. Brian?
Yeah, I'm going to build off of that too. I mean, when I take on a new client, I want to drill into the why. Why are you doing what you're doing? If it's just to make money, people are going to see through that. Okay, and that's a big part of the conversation that we're having right now. The true artist versus one that wants to commoditize that artistry. Listen, I think any great artist should be business minded, and so many are. But that's definitely a big part of this conversation. But that can't be what you're all about. That if making money is your why, you will be exposed. So I like to pose this question with clients and new clients, not necessarily what's your why, but what are you fighting for? What are you fighting for day in and day out? That's our message. I can sell that.
I love that. Tiff?
I really love the community engagement piece. I actually just want to start there because just being able to get others excited about your mission, like not only being able to tell your story and be your authentic self and have people drawn to it, but then also being able to have everyone join in on the fun. Clearly Kendrick's team had their ears to the streets too. Black Twitter is talking, music fans, like, everything that kind of went on in the background to help inform these decisions, and inform the strategic plan, because that's what it is. It's really like a rollout. It's really a campaign. It went a long way. You're not just assuming what you want your audience to care about. You are listening. You understand your audience already. You again are moving like one band, one sound type of thing. So once you have that type of connection, it's anything's possible. So I think that just being that connected, that in tune, and that informed is very special.
Love that. Tony, your takeaway?
Yeah, I like everything Tiff just said right there. Number one, connection. And I'm going to quote, this is exactly what I would say to a client based on this story. I'm going to quote Billboard, where it says, nearly 61 million combined official streams over a 3-day period, a gain of 31% over a 3-day period prior to Juneteenth by this pop out. So the utilization of social media. And a lot of clients will tell me, I don't want to be on social media. And it's not about you being on social media. It's about you utilizing the digital platforms. And this shows now, right now, everybody's going to be waiting and seeing what ball's going to drop next. They're going to wait. Is there going to be another pop out? Is there going to be another Amazon Prime stream? And because it wasn't, it was a surprise. It wasn't planned out publicly, just privately. And I think that's one of the most important ways to go to a client, say you need these digital platforms, whether you're on it or not. Trust your team to utilize them, because as you show, it will give you the biggest ROI.
Can I add on to what Tony said as well?
Please do.
People were so excited. Again, coming back to that nostalgia, or I know Amazon Prime streaming is a newer, of course, platform, but the nostalgia of being able to, for example, on Twitter, like watch shows as a family, to be able to like enjoy this concert. Hey, I was on my flight back to LA streaming the concert, like just in heaven. So there's something about being able to do that and again have that connection and on such a huge platform. Yeah, if I was Drake, I'd be sick because the world is watching.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask, but what do you think about, or what was Drake thinking about, or what would you think about as the community when you saw all of the athletes there, though, especially those that he thought was on his team? And maybe they were until, but Tony, I really want to hear from you when the athletes show up and partake in such a cultural moment from a sports analysis from the eyes of someone that loves sports, even if you're not a hip hop fan, what is that saying to you? What does that say about them?
Well, number one, it goes back to the word connection, right? So the biggest thing in sports is the connection with your fan base, the connection with your city, the connection with your culture, right? Like here, and obviously you say I'm a Philadelphia guy, right? So I bleed green. So I'm a Philadelphia Eagle fan. I hate the friggin' Cowboys. Okay, that's what we do. That's what we were born to do, right? I was born to hate the Cowboys. I was born
Who
as a Philly
doesn't?
fan to hate the Mets. That's just what we do. And I think when you see it makes you think a little different, right? Because you're seeing athletes from all different teams, and it shows you that they are a brotherhood. One biggest thing about the NFL, it's a huge brotherhood. It's a union, right? So now I think from Drake's perspective, you look at it and say, how disconnected am I from not only the community, but how about the brotherhood of music? How about, because guess what? Now that the athletes are showing they're united, and now you're all alone, and you're looking at that like, damn, how did I become disconnected? So that would be my biggest takeout if I was Drake, based on all the athletes showing up.
Anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think it truly goes to the connection, as he was saying, because most of those athletes that you saw there also kind of had that same kind of upbringing of what Kendrick had. So they understood what he was doing and why he was going at him so hard, and the way that he was, saying the words that he was saying and dropping. So they understood that fight. So they connected directly to his message and was like, hey, they played in the locker room. No diss to Drake, because I'm sure many of them still talk to him and talk to him. But at the end of the day, they was like, this is what we connect with. So Drake, you ain't making nothing right now. We connecting with. So you need to try to figure that out.
Messaging matters. Tiff?
Again, the unity of it, I really want to tie back. I know there's people kind of from all over there, but it was really like a homecoming. So to be able to have, especially like locals, whether you were in music, sports, entertainment, whatever it may be, come together is great. I think even like the title of it, just calling it, like the pop out, but then Ken and Friends really showed that unity. So it's all his friends. It's not just his music counterparts. It's everybody who's connected to that. And like we were just saying, just believe in it. And hey, we can still be cool, but this is where I'm at. I'm at the pop out. There's so much FOMO around that event. So I think it was it was excellent.
Love this. So my takeaway is this, and I always ask my clients or potential clients, who are you and why should anyone care? And I think it's a moment where Drake can ask, who am I and why should they care? What do I do to get them to care? So clearly there's going to be moments of vulnerability and transparency that needs to happen. Real PR takes place when there is a connection, when there is something that triggers someone to want to know more or want to be connected. And I just feel like that's something that he needs to find. And for Kendrick, I do believe that he has really galvanized that, and he has triggered that even more in people that really needed it. One of the most impactful moments was obviously any reference to Nipsey and Tupac. I'm from the Bay. I'm not shy about that. Every time he references Pac, and then having E40 open the show was everything for me. That triggered it for many of us. So it wasn't just a homecoming for LA people. It was a California moment. And even when you have something that is regional like that, other people can feel it because it is authentic. That is why it is galvanizing so much support, because of the authenticity in the emotional impact of the entire process in everything that has happened. So my takeaway for potential clients of any of ours is recognize the impact that you want to make. Like Brian said, what are you fighting for? And it has to be more than just your business. Is it your legacy? Is it the lessons? Is it, the takeaways that you need somebody to get from the product or from the service? What are you fighting for? Identify that before you even move forward with trying to build your reputation or build your brand. Who are you and why should people care? Because our jobs as PR professionals is to get people to know, like, and trust you. If you don't know yourself, how can I get people to know you? If you can't even trust us to do our job, this is not going to work. And you can tell in everything that took place that culminated in that pop out is there was a lot of people that knew Kendrick, that liked him, and that trusted where he was taking them, because I don't think anybody really knew how this was going to end, but they trusted him with their reputation. They trusted him with their talents, with their skills, with their business, with their brand. They trusted him. So understand that trust is a big part of this. Emotional impact is the biggest, and you have to identify that for yourself before we can even work with you and get people to know, like, and trust you. So I want to thank each of you for being here. Please let everyone know, we'll start with you, Tiff, how they can stay connected to you or get in contact with you if they want to work with you.
Great conversation, Tanya. Everybody here, it's been wonderful to connect. I can be found at on Instagram, Tiff or Die. Also, our company, Brand Curators, I put the handle here. It's at brandcurators.co, which is also our website. I also want to be able to share my podcast where we offer a lot of tips, advice, interviews, and support. It's called Main Character Energy with Tiff Knighten. So feel free to check that out on all streaming platforms. I'd love to continue this conversation too, Tanya. So we'll have to chop it up again soon because I love to talk about this stuff all day.
Absolutely, absolutely. Tony?
Yeah, listen, this is easy. You see at Rise with Tony. So if you type in at Rise with Tony, you'll find everything from TikTok to Instagram to Facebook, you name it. Go to RiseReactMedia.com. There's a contact form if you'd like to work with me, if I could help you in any way. I'd love to do it, work with people from all different backgrounds and different areas. And I just started a brand new podcast called Fighting for Overtime, where I break down the anxiety and accreditation of youth sports when it comes from a mental health perspective. I dealt with a lot of things in my life as a coach of 20 plus years and a lot of things that make people's heads spin. So I just started that. We're about 7 episodes in. I interview athletes, I interview coaches, former athletes, parents, you name it. And it's all really, really good stuff that makes you know that you've probably gone through the same situations I have. So if I can help by showing you're not alone, that's good enough for me.
Thank you so much. Brian?
Yes, Brian Hart PR on X. You'll get a lot of Philly sports takes. Tony, you and I definitely have to follow each other. I'm sure we're going to have a lot to talk about with the Phillies. Sixers have the second night of the draft tonight. We got a lot going on. For my PR agency, flackable.com. You can learn a little bit more about the work I do. Thanks
Thanks
Tanya.
so much. Daniel?
So I'm easy. DJS1914 on all platforms, Twitter, Instagram, everything from there. My company is Awkward Media Group, the same for Instagram and everything. And that's, of course, awkwardmediagroup.com if I can help and assist in any way. So let me know. And then, Tony, I think we got to connect. I got some athletes for you that would be perfect to be on the podcast. So they like to tell their story. They're huge mental health advocates. So the ones that I've connected with.
I hope you guys got that 1914. That is my fraternity brother, Phi Beta Sigma there. Proud to have you in the room, sir. And again, I want to thank you all for being here in my community of PR and media. I think what we do is hugely important in helping people understand how to digest the things that are going on in our media world. Hopefully we'll get to get together again because we know that this story has not ended. So until next time, I want to thank each of you and encourage all of you out there to get in touch, follow, and continue to kind of hone your craft for understanding the media. Don't let people just feed you information. Dig a little deeper. Understand what their message is. Understand who they are. Who should you be paying attention to? What should you be paying attention to? And never, ever feel like you can't ask any of us for some help because that's what we're here for. So thank you again, you guys. And yeah, we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for showing up to the podcast where we all know that the best leaders are lifetime learners. When you get a sec, take a moment, leave a comment. What you think about today's episode? And share it with someone that you know could use the gems that were dropped today. Follow and subscribe. You don't want to miss who's coming up next. You never know who could show up here and what they could say. For your professional needs, marketing, PR, communications, and leadership, make sure you follow us on all social media platforms at Sand and Shores, or hit us up at sandandshores.com. Again, thanks so much for showing up. We appreciate you, and we'll see you soon.